Welcome to another Ronel Talks Money show. Now, 10x Investments issue the retirement reality report on an annual basis. And I believe this is such valuable information, and it's also very interesting to go through the findings. And I thought to invite the CFO of 10x Investments, Tim Merryweather. So Tim will be with us today just to discuss this report in a bit more detail and to also share some tips so that you are not only aware of these findings, but you can also evaluate where you are in your personal situation, but also what can you do to improve your retirement savings and get a retirement plan going. So Tim, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Ronel. Nice to be here.
Okay, yeah, I'm really looking forward to this discussion because when I went through the report, there was so many like interesting findings, and I struggled to kind of limit the questions. But I think maybe first of all, you can just start off by just telling us a little bit more about 10x Investments and what you do.
Okay, cool. So yeah, 10x Investments is an investment management business that's focused on retirement. And our mission is to help more South Africans retire with dignity. And what we do this by simplifying and demystifying the investment process so that our customers or the public can have confidence that they can make an investment decision and get a really good outcome in the end. So we offer people tools that they can track their progress against their goals, and we manage their risk profile during their investment cycle through our life staging process, and we deliver the market returns through our index fund portfolio. And we can do this all at a low cost, so this ultimately gives them a really good return.
Okay, excellent. Now, what was the reason behind the retirement reality survey and the report, and how did you obtain the data for this report?
Okay, so one of the challenges that we face is that people don't really want to engage with retirement until it's too late. So we wanted to try and educate the public and raise awareness for some of the big problems that we see in the industry around retirement. So we engaged with our partners, Brand Atlas, who conduct a lot of surveys in the financial services area. And their surveys cover around 15 million economically active South Africans. So it gives a very good, broad representation of the population of South Africa.
And then what was the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on retirement readiness in South Africa?
Ronel, unfortunately, the pandemic has added strain to an already difficult situation. So if you read the report, you can see people aren't very well prepared for retirement. And the COVID-19 situation certainly hasn't added to that. What we've seen is that a lot of people have lost their jobs and are having to withdraw or draw down on their retirement savings rather than preserve it. And this obviously impacts the amount that they've got saved when they ultimately retire. We've also seen employers who are having to reduce or cut back on pension contributions in order to save jobs and preserve cash. And I think, as with everything, this problem seems to impact the most vulnerable people the worst. So, those people who are already, who have very low balances or who have not really got enough money are the ones who are really struggling in this environment. So what I'd say is that, potentially this pandemic has set people back by several years in terms of, their retirement readiness. And, it's a real concern.
No, that is definitely, it just makes it much worse. And then what was also interesting to me is that only 6% of the respondents confirmed that they have a retirement plan and or actively executing their plan. Now, this number correlates to the number that we always hear from the National Treasury, indicating that only 6% of the population will be able to retire comfortably. Does this emphasize the importance of having a retirement plan and also executing?
Look, there's no doubt that having a plan and executing it gives you a much better chance of success. So, if you don't have a plan and you sort of bumbling your way along, you're most likely not going to get there. So, really what we're trying to say is people need to know what their goals are. That's the first thing, is to understand where you're heading, and then to track your progress against it. Because, we know that life's not a straight line. There are going to be ups and downs. But it's important that you're keeping an eye on your plan and where you are against that plan on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, most people don't really want to think about retirement until it's too late. They kind of think, oh, I have a company pension plan, that'll be enough. But it's they don't really have an awareness of it, and it's normally too late once they realize.
Yeah, I think retirement is pretty much similar to death. Nobody really wants to ever think about it, but the reality is you are going to face it sometime. So rather try to be better prepared. And what was also interesting was that 49% of the respondents indicated that they have no retirement plan. But explain to us what is considered to be a good and realistic retirement plan.
Okay, just to reflect on that for a second, that basically what we're saying is that half of people don't have a retirement plan. That's quite a scary statistic. I think that, like I said, I think awareness is the most important thing. You need to know what a good retirement looks like, and, understanding what amount of money you're going to need to have a decent lifestyle when you are retired. So, I think once you've got that, once you understand where you are today and what you're going to need to get to, then you can start to work on closing that gap. And I think for me the trick is this balance between affordability now and reaching a target in the future. So I think a good realistic goal is one that you don't have to sacrifice too much now, but you're still going to end up in a comfortable position in the future.
Okay, so the biggest secret, I guess, with retirement is to make use of the time value of money concept, as well as compounding growth on your retirement savings. But what advice will you give to people who are basically close to retirement age and they are not having sufficient retirement savings? Because I think that is what we hear all the time. And that is, again, coming back to what we're saying, that people don't want to think about it until they get very close to it, and then only they realize they are not fully prepared. But what's the advice? What can they still do?
Look, I think you're 100% right. Compounding is the secret weapon of retirement. And we all know that the longer you save, the better your outcome. So that's that's a fact. And we also know that lots of people don't want to. What I'd say is that if you've left it late, it's better to start right now than to not start at all. And I think people can still accumulate money over time if they start now. And I think what I'd say is that you need to be more aggressive. You need to save more if you've got a shorter time horizon, but it's better to start than not start at all.
No, I totally agree. I think while you are still having a bit of time, no matter how limited the time is, it is still better to try and just do whatever you can to be the best possibly prepared. Then I've also seen that your 10x formula for retirement savings success, you quoted as save 15% of your gross earnings for your whole working life, invest those savings in a well-diversified high equity fund, and crucially, keep fees low. So I think that comes back to basically confirming the time value of money. It confirms that you want to invest in high performing type of assets, and you want to keep your fees low. But for people who are not happy with the retirement fund, it's maybe either not performing the way that they envisaged, or the costs are quite high. What are the options that they have, and what are the costs and the tax implications?
Okay, so a first step for me is actually really just getting an understanding of the facts. So just knowing where you're invested, what the costs are, and what the returns have been actually puts you well ahead of the average person, because a lot of people just don't even know those simple facts about their investments. Then once you've got that, then you can start to compare what you have with what's available in the market. And I think, we see a lot of people with legacy products that just haven't been performing well and charge crazy fees. So the problem with some of these legacy products is that there are penalties if you exit early. So you need to weigh that up with with the benefit of being in a lower cost or better performing portfolio. Now, what we see in our experience is that if you withdraw your funds and pay these fees or pay the penalties, you can actually end up with a much better outcome by moving into a lower cost environment or a better performing environment. And just like the secret weapon of compounding applies to returns, it also applies to costs. So if you've got a long time to retire, that 2 or 3% that you save per annum can compound massively over 10 or 20 years. So yes, I think there are some barriers to moving your money out, but I think that's in most cases it's worth doing, especially if you're a long way off retirement. In terms of the tax implications, most of these funds are regulated, and if you're able to transfer money between funds without having to suffer any kind of tax consequences. So you are free to do that.
So I just want to emphasize again to the viewers, remember, nothing that we are discussing today is financial advice. It's educational. So please go back to your financial advisor or your consultant and go check these facts with them, because everybody's personal situation is different. So go check that if you want to move something, what exactly will be the implications for you. And then, and I think, again, make sure that the numbers make sense. Just don't make some kind of emotional decision. Do the calculations and make sure you are taking the correct decisions. Then also, Tim, I think there's always uncertainty in terms of the question of how much is really enough for retirement savings. Now, this is also where the replacement ratio concept, as well as a retirement calculator, can become very handy. Maybe you can just explain those concepts to us a little.
Okay, sure. So for most people, when you retire, you're not going to need as much money as you will need before you retire. And that could be simply because you're not saving towards your retirement, or because your kids have left home, or you paid down your mortgage, or whatever it might be, that you don't need as much money. We work on a rule of thumb that you'll need between 70 and 85% of your pre-retirement income to maintain your lifestyle in retirement. So that 70%, let's call it 75%, is the replacement ratio that people would talk about. So you should be aiming to have a pot of retirement savings that will allow you to draw an income equal to 75% of your salary before you retire. So that's the replacement ratio concept. And then in terms of having a calculator, I think the calculators will allow you to work out what that pot of money would look like, how big it needs to be in order to achieve that that income. So you can make assumptions around how much you need in terms of your income, and then the calculator will say, okay, well, if you need 100,000 Rand a year, then you're going to need X amount in your retirement pot in order to achieve that. So if you go to the 10x website, 10x.co.za, there's actually a really useful and easy to use calculator to illustrate that concept. And you can play around with it and sort of see where you might need to be.
Okay, now that's great. And I really would encourage the viewers to go and make use of these tools and see where you are and what you can do about your personal situation. I think the one thing that was quite a big concern to me when I've read through this report was that the report reflected that the retirement readiness gap between men and women not only exists, but it is actually becoming wider. So that this is quite a big concern if you think about all the empowerment initiatives and everything that we are constantly doing to try and uplift women or to get women to the same level. And then it also indicates that women still earn about 30% less than men. They make up more than 51% of the population, and women have much higher life expectancy. So this is really, I think, for women specifically, almost like a red light or a red flag that must go on, and women must really, I think, listen to this and see, but how can they try and change this situation? But what is the solution for women?
I mean, Ronel, it's a very concerning trend, and I think it impacts us as a society as a whole, and I think we really need to address it. I think I believe that there's kind of a continuum here. So some responsibility needs to be with individuals in terms of making sure that they are adequately protected and have a good plan and retirement plan. But also part of the situation needs to be resolved. I think that the retirement industry needs to create more awareness and engage more directly with women around retirement, and educate and uplift and help women, particularly to help close this gap, because I think not enough is being done, and we really do need to start to educate people. I think the other thing, once you've educated someone, then they have the tools and the ability to then actually address the situation. But I think there is definitely a gap there right now.
Yeah, no, and I think women also tend to, they are most likely not feeling comfortable to talk about these things. And it really becomes crucial that women start, talking about these things, start to find out more and start to take responsibility as well. Because at the end of the day, nobody is ever going to take better care of your financial well-being than yourself. Then
absolutely,
then one of the stats that I've also seen is that 79% of the households or with income of less than 20,000 a month need to continue earning something in retirement. 76% of people with a household income of 20 to 50,000, and 74% of those with a household income of above 50%, all of them basically indicating that they have to earn some kind of income in addition to the retirement savings after or during retirement during the retirement phase. this is obviously, I think, emphasizing that South Africans do have like a kind of culture and not a savings culture. And it also basically indicates that your earnings doesn't correlate with your retirement savings. So it seems that the problem exists kind of throughout. It's not getting better when you are earning more money.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure about the correlation per se. I think what I take from that is that people are struggling to make ends meet across all the income bands. It's not unique to people in the lower bands, and people have just adjusted their lifestyle to meet what they need, or what they earn rather. And I think we see it all the time. Affordability is the biggest obstacle here. So people are interested in having a good lifestyle now, and they're not really thinking about having a good lifestyle in the future. So we really need, again, it's about educating and making sure people are aware of that need, and then trying to work in some way of them affording to make those savings in the short term. You also have to remember, Ronel, that as people's income increases and their lifestyle improves, the amount that they need to have saved in the future also increases. So that kind of gap can actually get wider if you earn more.
No, that's a very valid point. But I think if we also look at these figures, then it indicates that about 4 out of 5 respondents indicated that they would need some kind of additional income. Would this kind of indicate that there might be a bigger shift towards entrepreneurship, where people maybe start a side hustle, or they start a business, or doing something kind of post-retirement just to keep or to get more income in? Or what do you believe is the solution for creating more income during retirement?
Well, there's a lot to think about here. So it's quite a complex question, I guess. But what we're seeing is that people are living longer, and they need to be able to afford a longer retirement. And we can see from the numbers that that's not really playing out. So people aren't able to afford that retirement. And on the other side of that, there's a big shift in the industry towards automation, and traditional jobs are being replaced by machines and computers. So I think what the real solution here is around economic growth. So you won't create more jobs and more employment opportunities without economic growth. Mm-hmm. And some of that will have to come from innovation and entrepreneurship. In the context of South Africa, that's where I'd see a lot of the new growth and new jobs coming. And then I also think that that as businesses, we need to be more creative about how we can address some of these social issues. And we're already seeing companies experimenting with job sharing, and people working 4 days a week or something like that, and as a way to sort of help create capacity within the economy for more people to be working and participating. In terms of people having a side hustle, I'm not sure that that's going to be the case for the majority of people. I think that the majority of people will just have to will be turning up to work for longer. They won't be retiring when they're 65 or 70. They will have to turn up for work longer, and the sort of entrepreneurship doesn't really apply in their case.
Yeah, so this is quite a tough one, and I think there's obviously, for a lot of people, there's medical reasons that's becoming an issue, where maybe if they become older, their health is maybe no longer giving them the opportunity to work, but they have to do it. So it's really a lot that people need to think about. And I see what the report also indicated is that 56% of respondents indicated that they cannot afford to save money on a monthly basis for their retirement, and 29% indicated that saving for retirement is just not a priority for them, which I think is again coming back to our previous discussion about awareness, and that people just don't want to think about retirement. But how can this be changed practically?
Wow, that's $1 million question for the retirement industry, Ronel. I think, we as human beings have a psychological problem with relating to our future self. So I think that it's hard for people to make a sacrifice today to benefit themselves in the future. And we can only really address it through awareness, education. I mean, that's one of the main reasons why we at 10X went and published this retirement reality report, was to create awareness and make sure that people understand where they're at and have some kind of thought process around it. But it's a long struggle, and it takes time for the message to get through to people. I think that in South Africa particularly, we don't really have a social security safety net, and the regulations around retirement are not geared towards guaranteeing a good outcome for people. So there's always going to be some people who fall into this category around, not interested and not engaged in retirement until it's too late.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those messages that's so important, but it's not a pretty message to give to people. So it's something that people, they will rather avoid, and they don't want to hear about it. So it's very difficult to really bring the education part to the receiving part and basically make it work. But Tim, the last question I want to ask you today, based on what the report basically reflected and indicated, as well as your experience in this industry, what are the words of advice that you can give to people with regards to retirement?
I think it's really straightforward, and we've kind of covered it already, but the first thing is to have a plan and execute that plan. Then make sure that plan includes saving as soon as possible, because you've got the benefit of compounding, and as much as possible. We recommend 15%, but if you can't afford 15%, at least start. And then finally, make sure you're invested in a well-diversified portfolio, and make sure that you're keeping costs as low as possible.
No, I absolutely like those words. And I think if you can already get that right, you will definitely be in a good position. So I am going to share the link in the description below, where you can also go and download the 10X Investments Retirement Reality Report. I want to encourage you to go and download it. There's a lot of interesting facts and stats, and a lot of content in there that can really help you to understand this better and to make better decisions. So Tim, I want to thank you for spending some time with us. Thank you for taking us through some of the findings of the report, and also sharing some of your knowledge and advice to help people to be better prepared for retirement.
Great, it's a pleasure, Ronel. Lovely to chat to you.
Okay, and then I also want to just remind the viewers again, remember to go subscribe to the channel. Also go to the link in the description where we have our monthly giveaway competition, where you can win one of my books, Financially Fit and Wealthy, as well as various other financial tools. So I hope you have received some value. I hope that it made you a bit more aware of things that you need to consider when it comes to retirement. And then I will see you again at the next Ronel Talks Money show.